It was you. All right, who got next? Welcome in here on this Wednesday night. Brandon Justice, Zach Libby, Dennis Fithian, we're ready to kick this one off. And I don't know if you guys know it or not, but 2 weeks from today is February the 2nd. And Zach, you know what that means?
National Signing Day. Traditional signing day, if I had it.
That's right, the old school one. There you go. It's also close to payday, so that's pretty nice too. And a fortnight, as they would say over in England. Although my son thinks that's a video game, he doesn't know what all that other stuff means. But if people are going to ask you 2 weeks out, they haven't been paying big time attention. Justice, we'll kick it off with you. They're going to say what's to be excited about with Michigan football recruiting when it comes down to National Signing Day. What are you going to say to them?
You're looking at Josh Connerly. You're looking at Andrew Paul. Michigan's trying to close on those two guys. The situation with Kevontae Hendry is one to keep tabs on, but as we've said, that one does not look good for Michigan. And so you're looking at Connerly and you're looking at Paul. And same we talked about yesterday, Dennis, with Andrew Paul. If anybody watching, tune in. But if you didn't, we really didn't get a whole lot from his camp following that visit, and we had heard from him beforehand. Vaguely and briefly, but all the same, there was, we had talked with him. So it's just been a little quiet from his camp thereafter. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Sometimes it's just a family trying to, keep things under the belt, which I respect, and we're not going to badger or anything. So that's pretty much the situation with Paul. And then with Connerly, you're really waiting to see what happens with Washington, with USC, with Miami. And I think we're not really going to get a true read, I don't think, on the Connerly situation until probably that final week. And then we'll get a better read on it. But that's really what you're looking at for this second final signing day of the 2022 class.
Zach, you got a good feeling or bad feeling about anybody? How about Kevontae Hendry? I know he got a story up and got some quotes from the young man. He is still a Michigan commit. I put that in air quotes, for people that are listening to the podcast. Are you expecting him to go elsewhere?
There was a video, he doesn't do many interviews. So it was telling when he did an interview with Woody Womack at the Polynesian Bowl check-in. They did a little bit talking about Michigan, and that's where I got the quotes from. His quote from Michigan, basically verbatim, was, "Things have been quiet lately." And if that doesn't tell you that Michigan has one foot out the door, I don't know what else can say that. He's been to Oklahoma, he's been to Washington, he's going to Florida this upcoming the weekend before signing day. Obviously, with Washington, that's where Courtney Morgan resides. And then with Oklahoma, he once considered, before everything happened, before he committed to Michigan, he considered Clemson to be his dream school. And that's where Brett Venables is now, in Norman. So you can see that's where the interest is coming from. If I had to guess right now, it'd probably be Oklahoma, just based on the relationship they have with Brent, with Hendry has with Brent. But Washington's still in play, obviously, with Morgan's presence there. So we'll see come traditional signing day when Hendry makes that official announcement.
Yeah, he's certainly not operating like a Michigan commit with all of that going on. Justice and I have talked extensively about Andrew Paul, and after I saw some quotes from his coach saying that he's getting the Bo Jackson treatment, and how everybody's coming at him, and Brandon's saying it's been pretty quiet out of his camp. What's your feel there? You get a gut on Paul, the running back from Texas?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell right now, just because you've got so many schools involved, and he really hasn't been at that point throughout his recruitment. This is all kind of just happening for him. It's kind of becoming of itself. So he's got some visits left on the table that are going to have to grind out here. And I think once those are over with, we'll have a better feel on it. As far as if there's one way to lean or the other here, you would have to think Michigan, just because they were the bigger school to get in earliest, and they have the best situation for him, like we talked about roster-wise. And then, furthermore, Michigan has done pretty well as a program given last year, but at the same time with its running backs. I mean, Hassan Haskins will be a pro. Blake Corum, maybe fringe, probably going to be a pro. And if he's at the mark he was at earlier in the year in 2021, then for sure. I guess we just have to see that again. And we know he has some inconsistencies, but that's neither here nor there. And then lastly, Donovan Edwards, who's, looks like he's going to be a stud as well and could be better than the two guys mentioned before him. So, Michigan's got a good group, a small group with only 4 scholarships, but a good group nonetheless, a great group. So you're probably not going to come in here and play right away. But it is realistic and attainable to think year 2, year 3 for Paul when he's on campus. And it's just a situation that I have a hard time not being attracted to. And then academically, he's got up there too. But there's other schools that are involved. There's Oregon, there's the in-state schools, and they're gonna. That's what it's going to come down to, I think, is do you want to come to Michigan, not just the program, not just the relationships. Do you want to come to a state vastly different than the one you're from in Texas, and entirely different climate, entirely different seasons. And let's put it this way, he wouldn't be the first one to do it. How many Texas kids have gone to Ohio, which Ohio probably not as gruesome of a winter as Michigan, but all the same, the proximity and just the adjustability of making that move is what's going to probably be most prominent when it comes to pressing that button, signing that dotted line with the Wolverines. So it's hard to tell where you're going to lean here with Paul, but Michigan has the momentum. I think Michigan's been more involved and recruited him the hardest because of its desperation for a running back, to be honest.
Yeah, and Zach, just think about it. Usually these guys are thinking about it maybe for years, certainly for months. And in October, there weren't, big name. He didn't have a whole lot of big time offers, and then they just started coming fast and furious to, boom, boom, and now it's going 100 miles an hour. So that's where we get where it's hard to read on Andrew Paul here.
I mean, that's the beauty of YouTube and social media, being able to find these guys, find these gems late in the process, especially for a kid like Andrew Paul, who had, over 2,000 yards rushing for his high school. No, like Brandon said, if he wants playing time in the next year or two, like he can find with Michigan with only 4 running backs on the scholarship. So it's going to be interesting. We'll see.
All right. So we have those two. Connerly, at one point, he had talked about just blowing past February 2nd. He doesn't seem like he's under any stringent timeline. Are we expecting news from him either way, or is it still a possibility that he could just say, hey, I'll talk to you whenever, go past February?
Yeah, I think that Josh Connerly's recruitment has kind of gone on its own terms, on his terms. He's really been in full control of that. He hasn't let a school sway him in. He hasn't allowed a signing day to determine what he's going to do either. I mean, he skipped the early one, and usually the high-profile guys are signing at the early one, and that's one thing. But you skip the second one, and you're a bit of an anomaly. You're one of very few that are going to do that, and it sometimes can be a risk, just because some schools at that point could be forced to pull out of it, or whatever it may be. Some schools are going to take themselves out of it to land a different player at the same position, just to make sure that they have that spot filled if needed. So it's just a risky play. In Connerly's case, probably not. I mean, you're going to find a way to get that kid on your team, on your roster, one way or another, in my opinion. So in his situation, probably not. Now, as far as what I think he's going to do, like decision-wise, I don't have a call on that. You'd have to think he's going to do National Signing Day. You'd have to think, right? Because like I just said, like the school he ultimately decides on, or whoever he's closest with at the time, whether it be Michigan, Washington, USC, Oklahoma, Miami, whatever it is. Either way, whoever gets to that point they're going to want an answer. And I think all of those schools are going to want an answer at that point, because you're risking those offers, like it or not, being pulled. I guess it's different in the case of a kid as talented as Connerly. He's probably going to stay in control, and if he really wants to take this past signing day, then he'll likely be obligated to, like I said. However, if I had to guess, you would really have to think that he'll have this figured out by then, just because it would be very different. Like, you just don't see it that often, I guess would be the best way to put it. So as far as where he's going, oh, God, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. Because he's been so quiet since after signing day. Like, we just haven't had a good read. Adam Gorney from Rivals, the national recruiting analyst at Rivals, seems to believe that Michigan was still in the driver's seat as of a couple weeks ago. We did a fact or fiction piece together, and there were some other writers on it as well. And in the Connerly, subject of it, I had fiction that they were in the driver's seat, and he had fact. So I went on devil's advocate, because I thought following Morgan's departure that Washington would be in the driver's seat. But here we are, not too far away from signing day, and Michigan's momentum, like that it had after the season with him, and then also dating back to the Washington game when he visited. Those things haven't gone anywhere. Like Michigan still has the same momentum now that they did then. Hot off the visit, Michigan thought they were going to get him and that he was going to commit. And that's why I referenced earlier, no team's really been able to draw him in. He's had full control of his recruitment. Michigan that's the peak of its momentum. But coming off of that, until now, it really hasn't changed. Like they're still the perceived leader, despite Morgan leaving, despite Oklahoma getting more involved, despite Miami with Cristobal leaving Oregon getting involved. All those things, considered, Michigan still would have to be the favorite. They would have to be, even though things, like I said, could change days before, hours before.
Well, in Connerly's defense here, if we go under the assumption that Jim Harbaugh is coming back and he's going to be the head coach at Michigan, I mean, he's got 5-6 schools, all big-time names. All of them have different coaches, so his head could be spinning. When you go to Oklahoma, Miami, Oregon, USC, Washington, I think he's considering all of those. All of those schools have one thing in common. They're all really nice schools. So they have maybe a couple things in common, but, when it comes down to the head football coach, they all have new coaches. So I can see why he's thinking about blowing past February 2nd, but yet you have that date for a reason. I mean, you got to make a decision at some point. And I could see if people were reading the tea leaves, Zach, if you'd say, well, that's why Michigan, they're in pretty good. They've got something that none of those other schools do, at least perceived stability.
They have stability, and like you said, if you're a 4 or 5 star kid, you have that advantage. You can prolong the process if you want to, but he's had 2 months since early signing day to figure this out. Like Brandon said, it's going to come down to national. It's going to come down on National Signing Day. I don't think it'll be prolonged till then. After then, but with Michigan, I guess. Not yet, but with Harbaugh possibly picking up that new contract and having a little bit more stability, like I said, Michigan has that advantage, and they'll use that going forward.
I want to know about an Elston effect, an EE. Michigan has a new defensive line coach, a guy that played, right here in Ann Arbor back in the day, and we know that they lost out on a guy because of Sean Nua, at least a guy who decommitted. An Elston effect, and Justice, you had a story up today that maybe he's at least got an interest of one, and it's a pretty big time name, not for coming up early February, but for next year.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I mean, Mike Elston coming here from Notre Dame, 12 seasons there, spent some time as a player at Michigan, as we know, and a GA. So this is a little bit of a homecoming for him, and Michigan is the benefactor of that because you don't really have to teach him what Michigan's about. And recruiting a lot of times comes down to selling your program, as we know. And sometimes when you're a brand new coach and you've only been at the program for 2, 3, 4 days or 1 week or whatever it may be, it's hard to sit in a living room and talk to a couple of educated parents about everything you know about Michigan, and you just started there, right? They're going to call you on your BS, maybe not externally, but at least internally. So Mike Elston kind of has this advantage and this upper hand. And yeah, he left a job he was at for 12 seasons and did a terrific job at.
Brandon's freezing up a little bit there, Zach. While he is frozen, you can just pick up the ball right off the ground, and Elston's sitting there in the living room, being able to talk to parents. That's what he's talking. That's what Justice was going on about. And, that makes sense to me. And also, not for February, but for next year, his idea of his kind of defensive line, I would imagine that we would see more and more of an Elston effect.
I think the biggest thing with Elston is that he actually enjoys recruiting. I mean, you can't really say that for a lot of assistant coaches. For someone to actually enjoy doing what they're doing and wanting to get the best talent on their roster means something. For him to come here, it kind of plays an important role in possibly bringing guys in like 4-star rusher Keon Keeley, 4-star linebacker Drake Bowen, 4-star defensive end Brennan Vernon, guys like that who are all high on Michigan's board, but are committed elsewhere. In these cases, for these guys like Notre Dame, if knowing his track record for the last 12 years and bringing in guys like Jalen Smith comes to mind, Chase Claypool comes to mind. These are all guys that can be must-haves for Big Ten football. So if Michigan can flip some of these guys, like I said about Bowen or Keeley or Vernon, to convince them to be coached by Elston and Ann Arbor rather than South Bend, it's a home run hire if that happens.
So you're thinking there's a chance? I mean, I wasn't considering any flipping, but I guess that is something that just like we talked about Kevontae Hendry, there's some other guys that are out there, same type situation, especially with Notre Dame losing their head coach. So you're kind of on flip alert, for 2 weeks from today too.
This is for the 2023 class.
Oh, 23. Okay. All right.
I think, for these guys, like the ones the aforementioned, like I said, if they committed their junior year, they're barely 16, 17 years old, and they lose out on the guy that recruited them the hardest, the most, and was their primary recruiter. There's decisions to make. And if you want to follow your coach, you have that opportunity now before you sign. And plus they have a year to decide. So if they care about the coach, then they'll go with Elston. It's a big, hard to ask, obviously, but it can happen. It has happened and it will happen.
We got a couple more minutes. We have heard from Brandon Justice. He says his Wi-Fi is out, although as soon as he says that, I see him reappear. Brandon, welcome back. Zach was doing a great job continuing on. I got your message, but I know how to talk into my watch, and I didn't want to do that while Zach was talking. So the only thing I had was a laughing emoji that I was able to send you. That didn't fit perfectly. But you to know that I at least got your message there. It was good for a minute. You were just sitting there, and then we were taking shots at you in the still frame. It was kind of nice. And we were still talking about the Elston effect and how this could carry and what it's going to look like.
I had a good thing going there. And then my Wi-Fi took me right out.
Well, it can happen. We do know that. Zach, and anytime anybody comes in, it feels like the first thing that I want to ask them is, how they feel about Dante Moore, the quarterback out of King. And, Zach at Michigan seems like they're in a pretty good spot here. I listened to Brandon talk about, the importance and the time that they've put in here. They seem to be doing everything right. And, is that your feel here too when it comes to the QB out of Detroit?
I mean, there's always one guy or two every year in the state of Michigan that's the prize attraction. Guys like Justin Rogers in 2020, Donovan Edwards and Damon Payne in 2021, and now with Will Johnson in 2022. For the 2023 class, it's obviously Dante Moore. He's the number 13 overall recruit in the country, number 13 pro-style quarterback, and number 1 in Michigan. And it's clear from his attributes, with great arm strength and on-field leadership, why Michigan would want him to wear maize and blue. It's too early to call Michigan the favorite because teams like Michigan State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State are legit possibilities. Plus, with so much interest from schools down south like Florida State, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, it's not a guarantee that Gante commits to the Wolverines, but it would be a hell of a pickup for sure.
I like it. So where do we go next here? Are we thinking about? Are there any surprising offers or anything that's happening here? It seems like they're certainly dishing them out. As I take a look at the den every day, there's another couple. Either of you guys want to jump in on that? Just how they're doling out the offers here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Cole Cabana offer was interesting because we saw him at Rising Stars back in, I think, like early December, mid-December. And I remember when we saw him, we kind of asked about him to a couple people within their program. And, you got like really high regard about him. And it wasn't as if he wasn't a Michigan player. It just seemed like Michigan wasn't interested. Like he hadn't really heard from Michigan all that much. They had kept tabs, but and he had visited and yada, yada, yada. You just kind of didn't think the Dexter running back was going to get offered by Michigan. But Zach went and saw him, was really impressed with him and what he had to show and all of that. And he'll talk about that, I'm sure. I wasn't there. But, I think that was one that kind of falls in your category where it's like they're throwing out some offers here. And he now that I've looked at it and seen the film and all that, it makes sense. And I wasn't surprised that they didn't offer him, or I wasn't surprised they offered him because of his skill set. It was simply just because of the dialogue that we had heard, not too long ago. So Michigan really turned the page there and kind of was ready to make that offer at a time that I didn't think they were going to make it. I thought that was maybe going to be a later one in the process and the timeline. So he kind of falls into that category. And Michigan, I think they're like far more cerebral with their recruiting nowadays. With the new staff, and I think they kind of knew Michigan State was going to take a running back. So getting in on that action with Cabana at that point in time, at that stage, was going to give them the most momentum over their biggest competition for them, which is definitely going to be State at this point.
Go ahead, Zach. What you saw Cabana in person?
Yeah, it was at the Rising Stars MLA camp in Pontiac. When I got there, I was told that he wasn't going to do 1v1 drills because he has obligations to indoor track. But he did participate in the combine stations with the 40-yard dash time. Not lying, but the leaders or the organizers, they made sure that people like me were there to watch him run this 40-yard dash. And it's obviously wide based on his time of 4.35. Others had him at 4.29. Others had 4.44.
And so, for the 40?
Yeah, for the 40.
All right. Okay.
So
sorry jumping on you like that. Those are pretty eye-popping numbers.
I mean, kid is quick. He's built like a tank in his lower body. He's added like 15 pounds of muscle over these last 2 months. So he's working. He's working to get that Big Ten body. We did get to talk after the combine, just talk about his offer and his interests. Basically, he really likes the idea of teaming up with, Michigan 2023 commit Adam Samaha, as the two are really good friends. And, go back to middle school when they played on the same team together. Both of them obviously went to the weekend festivities these last couple days, and Cabana even got to hang out with Samaj Morgan and the new commit Andrew Rapalea. He said this offer was a long time coming. After taking all those multiple unofficials over the summer during the season, so it's good for him to finally land that offer. In terms of him landing on Michigan, he is keeping his cards close to his chest. He mentioned Michigan State. He mentioned Cincinnati. He mentioned Pittsburgh as contenders for him, along with Michigan. So we'll see where it ends up.
They hand timing those things? They got a digital thing there? When you have a number of different times there, just a bunch of dudes with stopwatches?
Bunch of dudes with stopwatches.
What did you have him at? We got to get you a stopwatch.
I was too busy taking video for the brand,
Oh, all right. Hey, that's good. I like having the video there. Somebody said he was super fast. I mean, I'll take the 4.29 and just put it over here. If he's even close to a sub 4.4, I mean, let's go. Sign him up. I mean, that's legit Big Ten. That's legit, not just Big Ten. That's legit pro speed. I mean, you take that. There's a lot of guys at the combine coming up here that would love to have a 4.4. No doubt about that. So good stuff. Good stuff. Who else? Anybody else that people should know about? Zach, give us something that you're thinking about, or somebody that that Michigan fans might want to keep on their radar here in the coming days, if not, the weeks or months ahead.
There's one recruit that I'm really interested in following, Kane Green from Lee Summit, Missouri. He's one that went out to the weekend for a visit over the weekend. He told me that he's planning on taking at least 10 visits this spring before he narrows down his official 5. It means, it means a lot knowing that Michigan's number 1 on his list, because that was his first visit following the dead period. He knows Aaron Bell, Ronnie Bell's family. He knows that family very well. Ronnie actually played in the same conference as Lee Summit. Caden actually played basketball with his brothers at one point. So there's a lot of Michigan talk in terms of having that relationship. Aaron Bell, like I said, Ronnie's dad, has been really crucial in helping him get to know more about Michigan and the facilities and the coaching staff. So if there's one person that's really shooting up the boards, it's definitely him. We'll see where it goes after he takes his unofficials. But it would not be surprising if he uses his official visit for Michigan for sure.
Well, I love Ronnie Bell, so any connection with him, I can imagine that Ronnie himself would be a pretty good recruiter after a pro career or whatever else he's going to end up doing. I'll vote for him for mayor. Brandon, anything else that you're thinking about here? And 2 weeks from, the National Signing Day and all these offers going out, what else are you keeping tabs on?
As far as 2022s go, I think everything that you could talk about with it we've covered. But something else I'm looking at would be Letta. We just dropped an interview with him this morning. I talked to him last night, and he was really interesting to talk to. A Texas kid, 4-star defensive end, has that Ojabo type of body type. Not really as big and as wide as Hutch, but has a skill set that Michigan's defensive ends of years past have had, and he knows that and understands that, and he took interest in Michigan because of it. He put it pretty simply. He said he followed Mike Elston on Twitter, and the next day Mike Elston called him, and he had an offer from Michigan, and he was Mike Elston's first offer as a recruiter for Michigan, as far as we know. So, with that in mind, you got to prioritize that kid, and he went on to say that Elston was pretty much ready to take him. Ready for him to come to Michigan and play and work and make things happen. Obviously, he needs to visit first, and he's going to do that at the end of the month. He was supposed to visit Michigan State, and he still will visit Michigan State, just not solely Michigan State. He'll head over to Ann Arbor as well when he's up here in Michigan from Texas. So I think he's an interesting one because, culturally great fit, academically great fit. I mean, his top schools are Stanford, Cal, Utah, Michigan, and Michigan State. So that's a strong group of academic schools. And you can tell he's considering it because he's got offers like Oklahoma State in there, who just had a phenomenal season on their belt. So, with all that being said, I think Michigan's just as interested as he is, and that's really important in the recruiting process, especially for longevity purposes, because whether or not that kid's interested now or later is contingent upon their commitment, and the same can be said about whether the program is interested in the same way they were today as they are 3 months from now. So, and I think that's going to stay there because he's just such a good fit for this place. He's academically, culturally, and just his body type. And Michigan's taking defensive ends of his body type any day of the week. And not to mention, he's been evaluated pretty highly by rivals and by scouting services throughout. So, yeah, I think he's just one to keep an eye on. They need a defensive end soon. And at some point, they'll probably take 2 in this class, maybe even 3. I think that they like stacking those things up. That position group specifically, I think they like stacking up because of how much Mike McDonald uses the edge rusher in his defense. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I honestly, at this point in time, he's fresh off the offer, but you can tell in his just in inflection in his voice, and you read the quotes, it makes a lot of sense for that kid to come here. He automatically said Michigan was in his top 5, and it just seems like he's a guy that's going to end up here. And that's a hunch. That's not sourced information or anything. It's based on a conversation with him, knowing what Michigan needs and wants in that class, and knowing what they've done in the past with his body type. It makes a lot of sense. And I would have to pick him as a guy that ends up here one way or another.
It makes a lot of sense if you're a defensive end or outside linebacker and you watch Michigan this year and you're going to watch the draft and you see Ojabo and Hutchinson's name flying off the board in the 2nd and 10th pick overall, that you might want to go play for Mike McDonald up at Michigan. Zach, before I get a last word from you, what also makes sense to me is throwing this this foreplay by you: Rangers, Ducks, and then the under in both, a 4-team parlay. I mean, I know you've been sharpening, you're hitting them all and everything, but I just pulled one out of there. Leafs and Rangers, Avs and Ducks. I like the Avs, I like the Rangers. An under in both games, 4 spot. You like it?
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's a parlay, so I hate it. But
well, you're good at them, so that's why I put it there. Hey, Zach, you have any final thoughts here as we wrap this one up?
For gambling help, call 1-800.
There you go. Yeah, we should. There's so many commercials, and at the end, they got to throw those numbers out fast. If I was a fast talker, I would just tell everybody else all day long, every day, all day. The Den, the Wolverine Den, Rivals, the Maize and Blue Review. These guys got it covered. It's great. Zach, it was fun talking with you for the first time here on camera. Justice will do it again. And you guys have a great night. Thanks, man.
I'll see you guys later. Thanks for having us on.
There it is. Who got next?
Appreciate it, Dennis.
Thank you.